And yesterday we reported on a 10-point plan, and I'm told by a U.S. official that that was actually an old plan that the Iranians put out.
So I want to talk about something today that honestly has me more concerned than the war itself. And I know that sounds like a big statement, but what's happening right now behind the scenes inside our government, inside our media, might actually be bigger threat to ending this conflict than anything Iran is doing. Let me explain. As of yesterday, the United States and Iran have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. Pakistan has brokered it. Iran submitted a 10-point peace proposal. The one that was apparently leaked to the news media was fake.
And then, frankly, I've seen a third 10-point proposal that's even more maximalist than the first 10-point proposal that's been floating around various social media channels. Now, here's what's interesting about all this, is that I've seen various organs, the New York Times, CNN, others, pick up and run the original 10-point proposal based on little more than a random Yahoo in Iran submitting it to public access television in the country of Iran.
Trump called it, and this is his language, a workable basis on which to negotiate. Vice President J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, they're headed to Islamabad tomorrow to sit down and try to turn this thing to an actual deal. So on paper, this is good news, right? 40 days of strikes, missiles flying, the Strait of Hormuz shut down. Oil prices went through the roof, and now we have a pause, and suddenly oil prices drop, I want to say about 19% within the first hour. We're currently in a window, 2 weeks to figure this out. But here's what's happening at the same time. We've got leakers inside of the national security apparatus actively undermining the process. We've got media outlets publishing what appear to be fake or altered versions of Iran's negotiation position. And we've got an entire ecosystem of doom and gloom content creators who seem to be more interested in America failing than seeing this resolved. And I think we need to talk about all three of those things because they're all connected. And they're dangerous. So let's start with the arrest because this just happened and it's significant. The FBI arrested a woman named Courtney Williams. She's 40 years old, lives in Wagram, North Carolina, a former Army civilian employee. She worked at Fort Bragg supporting a military unit, a special military unit. And look, when the DOJ says special military unit, they're talking about Delta, the unit. This is the most elite level of professional operations we have. She held a top secret SCI clearance from 2010 to 2016. That's secret compartmentalized information. So she had access to incredibly sensitive operational information. The kind of stuff, if it gets into the wrong hands, people die. That's not hyperbole. That's just the reality of classified information at that level. And what she allegedly did was communicate with a journalist, a guy by the name of Seth Harp. And this has been over a period of about 3 to 4 years that we know about. They had over 10 hours of phone calls, more than 200 text messages, and some of the information she provided ended up in a book he wrote about special operations at Fort Bragg. Now, here's the part that gets me. In her own text messages, she acknowledged what she was doing. She told someone she was concerned about the amount of classified information that was being disclosed. She cited the Espionage Act by name. She told a friend her words, "I'm probably going to jail for life." She knew exactly what she was doing. She understood the consequences, and she did it anyway. And look, I know there are going to be people who say, well, maybe she was a whistleblower. Maybe she was exposing wrongdoing. And maybe that's part of her story. But here's the thing. There are legal channels for whistleblowing. There are inspector generals. There are congressional oversight committees. There are hotlines. You don't just call a journalist and start handing over classified national defense information. That's not how it works. And the reason it doesn't work that way is because the process of vetting what can be disclosed and what can't That whole process exists to protect the people who are still in the fight, the operators, the guys downrange, the families. John Walker, look him up for the submarine community. Now, Kash Patel, the FBI director, put it plainly. He said this should serve as a message to any would-be leakers. We're working these cases, we're making arrests. Now, this goes back to the book. The Williams arrest is actually a separate case from the one that's been all over the news this week. And I think it's important to distinguish between the two because they both matter, but for different reasons. Over the Easter weekend, an F-15 Strike Eagle went down over Iran. 2 crew members. One was recovered relatively quickly. The other was still missing, still out there in the hostile territory, basically playing hide-and-go-seek for his life. And there was an active rescue operation underway to bring that person home. And while that rescue operation was happening, while American Special Operations Forces were putting themselves at risk to recover this pilot, someone leaked the information to the press. The fact an aircraft went down, the fact that there was a missing crew member, all of it. And here's why that matters so much. The president explained it Monday at a press conference. He said, we don't talk about the first crew member for an hour, and then somebody leaked and suddenly the world knew there was someone else missing. Iran then put out a bounty. They offered a reward for capturing this American pilot. I think it was about $60,000. So I want you to think about what happened. An American with access to classified information during an active combat rescue gave that information to a media outlet.
You probably know we didn't talk about the first one for an hour. Then somebody leaked something, which we'll hopefully find that leaker. We're looking very hard to find that leaker.
That information was then used by the enemy to hunt an American service member. I don't care what your politics are, red, blue, middle, I don't care. I don't care if you love the president or you hate him. I don't care what news outlet you watch. That should make your blood boil. That is not a policy disagreement. That's not journalism. That's someone valuing their agenda. Whatever it is, they valued it more than the life of an American in uniform, and they haven't caught that leaker yet. That investigation's ongoing, but Trump made it clear they're going to the media company. They're invoking national security, and they're demanding the source. So now let's connect the bigger picture, okay? Because this is where it gets really interesting and honestly kind of alarming. So the ceasefire happens. Iran submits their point proposal. Trump makes it workable. Trump says it is workable. Talks are set for Islamabad. Everything's moving in a direction that, at least gives us a chance at a diplomatic resolution. Then, almost immediately, Iranian state media and CNN start publishing what they say is Iran's 10-point plan.
The Iranians are trying to put out disinformation already. And yesterday we reported on a 10-point plan, and I'm told by a U.S. official that that was actually an old plan that the Iranians put out.
And what does it include? Iran keeps enriching uranium. Iran gets full control of Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. pulls all combat forces out of the Middle East. That would include Kuwait, that would include Bahrain, and any of the other bases like in the UAE, Dubai, or Qatar. The U.S. then is supposed to pay Iran reparations for war damage. We won't talk about the money that Obama sent. I don't know what you call that. And if you read that list and thought, wait, there's no way Trump agreed to that, you're right. He didn't. The White House came out immediately and explicitly said the plan that Iran released publicly is not the same document they received privately. We haven't seen that yet as of recording this video. Trump posted that there's only one set of meaningful points acceptable to the United States, and they'll be discussed behind closed doors. So what just happened? Somebody, whether it was Iranian intelligence playing games with their own media, whether it was someone inside our system, or whether it was our news media, an outlet here in the United States, that didn't bother to check if this was a published version of the negotiation or some just AI-generated hate mob. During a ceasefire, 2 days before peace talks. Now let's think about this strategically for a second, because this is important. When you're negotiating, when you're at the car dealership, you and your wife don't talk numbers in front of the sales guy, or he knows how much you can spend. And in a situation like this where trust is basically zero, the last thing you want is your negotiating position being leaked to the public. And it's even worse when the leaked version is wrong or just lies. On the Iranian side, their hardliners now think they're negotiating from a position of strength. The regime newspaper is literally calling for Trump's removal, right? His death. Iranian state TV is telling their people this was an enduring defeat for DC, for America. If the Iranian public believes their government got the U.S. to accept enrichment, accept troop withdrawals, accept reparation, that makes it politically impossible for Iranian negotiators to make concessions because their own people think they already won. Now, let's talk about our side. The leaked document gives domestic critics ammunition to say Trump got played, which pressures the White House to take a harder public line. And this narrows the room for actual diplomacy behind closed doors. Both of those dynamics make escalation more likely. And I have to believe that whoever put that document out there understood that. This wasn't an accident. This was strategic. And this brings me to something I've been wanting to talk about for a while now. And I think this moment kind of demands it. There is a growing ecosystem of content creators, podcasters, influencers, ex-posters, people with big platforms who have essentially built their entire brand on doom. Or they built their brand by interviewing the president and then switched to doom. Everything is falling apart. Nothing can be fixed. Every move is the wrong move. America's finished. And look, I understand the impulse. I really do. Things are scary right now. We're in a shooting war with Iran. Oil prices are up. Uncertainty everywhere. It's natural to feel anxious about where this is heading. But there's a difference between those being honest about their challenges and actively rooting for failure. And I think some of these voices have crossed the line. They don't want to see a deal with Iran because a successful deal would undermine their narrative. They don't want to see the troops come home safe because that would mean the administration that they oppose did something right. They would rather be right about the apocalypse than see America succeed. And here's where it gets really concerning. There are credible whispers, and I want to be careful here because I don't have documents to show you, but there are credible whispers from people in and around the intelligence community that some of these influencers are being amplified or even funded by foreign governments. Iran, Russia, China, countries that have a direct strategic interest in dividing the American public and undermining our ability to project strength at the negotiating table. Now, I'm not going to name names because I can't confirm it. I don't have the receipts. And I'm not going to do what CNN did and just run with something I can't verify. But I will say this. If you're consuming content from somebody who never, and I mean never, has anything positive to say about America or our military, who celebrates every setback, who pushes narratives that just happen to perfectly align with Iranian or Russian state media talking points, ask yourself who benefits from that content. Ask yourself where the money comes from, because that is the reasonable question.
How do we 25th Amendment his ass?
The problem is to get the 25th Amendment is harder than impeachment. You have to get 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate.
So what do we do?
I think as Americans, especially as people of faith, as veterans, as people who actually love this country, we have a responsibility to be discerning about the information we consume. Not every criticism is sabotage. Healthy criticism is patriotic, but there's a difference between saying, I think this strategy has problems, and here's why, versus everything is lost. America deserves to fail. That's what a lot of them are saying, and nothing else matters. The first one is citizenship. The second one is something else. So let me bring it all together. Let me land the plane, because I think the through line here is really important. We're in a 2-week window right now. That's what we have. 2 weeks to try to turn this ceasefire into something that sticks. 2 weeks to resolve the enrichment question, to get the Strait of Hormuz permanently open, to figure out what happens with Lebanon and Hezbollah, and to hopefully bring our service members home without this thing escalating further. And every leak makes that harder. Every fake document makes that harder. Every doom merchant telling you it's already over and nothing matters makes that harder. Because here's the thing, people forget diplomacy doesn't happen in a vacuum. Public perception matters. When the American public is divided, demoralized, and lied to on social media, our negotiators have less leverage. When the Iranians believe, because CNN told them, that we've already conceded on enrichment, they have less reason to compromise. When a leaker inside the Pentagon gives away operational details during a rescue mission, our military has less ability to operate. All of these things are connected. The leakers, the documents, the blackpill content machine, they all serve the same function. They weaken America's hand at the exact moment when we need to be strongest. And I think for those of us who love this country, for the veterans watching this, for the families with somebody deployed right now, for anyone who prays for our nation, this is a moment that requires clarity. It requires us to see what's happening for what it is. And it requires us to reject the people who are profiting off of our fear and our division. Tomorrow is a big day. Vance and the team sit down in Islamabad, and whatever you think about the politics of all this, I think we can agree that the deal that keeps America safe, brings our people home, is worth pursuing. And the people trying to blow that up, whether they're inside of the government or behind a microphone, they need to be held accountable. That's where I land on this. Let me know where you land in the comments. If this made sense to you, share it with someone. Subscribe if you're new, and whatever else is going on, pray for our troops. Pray for wisdom for our leaders. Pray for this country. I'll see you in the next video.